The cacophony of Earth transmissions had been a constant presence in the Council's monitoring chamber for decades. Radio waves, digital signals, quantum communications, all blending into a persistent hum that filled the vast crystalline space. Until, without warning, it stopped. High Monitor Zexley's tendrils coiled in distress as emergency alerts flashed across the neural interfaces. Impossible. Run another diagnostic. Third diagnostic complete, their subordinate reported, mandibles clicking anxiously. All channels silent. No degradation, no interference pattern. Earth's entire communications network has gone dark. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations began talking at once, their translator modules struggling to keep pace with the overlapping voices. They've finally destroyed themselves. A preemptive surrender. Technical failure across their networks. Regent Kixatal watched from her elevated position, her iridescent scales shifting from deep blue to amber, a sign of intense focus that her colleagues had learned to heed. When she finally spoke, her measured tone cut through the noise like a plasma blade through hull plating. "You're all wrong," she said. "This is strategy." The chamber fell silent. Kixatal rose from her crystalline throne, her ceremonial robes catching the light from the holographic displays that still showed Earth's last transmitted signals. "High Monitor," she addressed Zexley directly. "How long did it take your systems to notice the silence?" 3.2 minutes, Regent. And in those 3 minutes, how many of our monitoring stations could have been compromised? How many of our defense networks might have been mapped by signals we assumed were mere background noise? Kixatal's outer membrane rippled with barely contained tension. We've grown complacent, comfortable in our assumption that humans are predictable, noisy, technologically inferior. Ambassador Moral's crystalline form vibrated with derision. They're barely more than primitives. 2 centuries ago, they were still burning fossil fuels. 2 centuries ago, Kixatal countered, they were also planet-bound. Now? Their colonies reached the edges of our space. When the swarm attacked their Proxima settlement, everyone expected it to fall within days. Instead, the humans adapted their mining lasers into point defense weapons. They survived 7 weeks until help arrived. She moved to the central display, manipulating it with practiced gestures. When their Mars colony's atmospheric processes failed, they didn't evacuate. They modified their own respiratory systems to survive in the thinner air. The chamber grew still as Kixatal continued, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. Every time we've underestimated them, they've surprised us. Every limitation we thought would contain them became a catalyst for their evolution. What are you suggesting, Regent? Zexley's tendrils twisted in complex patterns of worry. I'm suggesting that this silence isn't an ending. Kixatal's scales shifted to deep crimson. It's a beginning. Humanity hasn't gone silent because they've given up. They've gone silent because they no longer need us to hear them. She turned to face the council, her final words falling like stones into still water. The question isn't what happened to Earth's transmissions. The question is, what are they doing now that they don't want us to hear? In the unsettling quiet that followed, the empty monitoring displays seemed to mock them all with their silence. Patrol Commander Vex-Her prided himself on 20 cycles of perfect threat assessment along the Council border. His crystalline sensor arrays had mapped every asteroid, tracked every cosmic ray, and flagged every potential anomaly in his sector, which made it all the more shocking when the human fleet simply appeared. One moment, empty space. The next, 37 ships of unknown configuration, their hulls seeming to drink in the light from nearby stars rather than reflect it. Multiple contacts. His sensor officer's carapace turned pale. No FTL signature, no transition distortion. They're just there. Impossible, Vex-Her muttered, even as his combat training took over. Battle stations, shields to maximum, warning shots across their— "Sir," his communications officer interrupted. "We're being hailed. Text only." The message scrolled across their main display. Asterisk Attention Council Forces. Maintain current position. Any aggressive action will be interpreted as hostile intent. Stand by for communication from Fleet Command. Vexher's mandibles clicked in agitation. The sheer audacity. A new signal cut through their encrypted channels with surgical precision. The holoscreen filled with the image of a human female, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence, her uniform bearing insignia that their databases couldn't identify. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she said, her translated words carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. "I trust I have your attention." Vexher drew himself up to his full height. "You are in violation of Council space. Your vessels will power down and prepare for—" "No," Chen interrupted, the ghost of a smile playing at her lips. "We won't, but I appreciate the suggestion." She glanced down, seemingly consulting something off-screen. "You're Patrol Commander Vexher, correct? Your record indicates you're reasonable. That's good. We need reasonable right now." "How did you access my—" He stopped himself, mandibles clicking. "State your purpose." "Gladly." Chen's image was replaced by a tactical display showing Council space. Red dots began appearing, spreading like a virus across the map. "These are the current positions of Earth fleet elements throughout Council territory. You're not just seeing one fleet, Commander. You're seeing the first one we've allowed you to detect." The tactical officer made a sound of distress. "Sir, confirming multiple new contacts. They're everywhere." Chen's image returned. "For the past 3 years, we've been testing our ghost drive technology in your space, mapping your sensor networks, understanding your response patterns. We could have struck at any time." She leaned forward slightly. "We chose to talk instead." "This is an act of war," Vexher managed, even as his tactical mind raced through the implications. "If we wanted war, you wouldn't have seen us until it was too late." Chen's voice softened marginally. "This is a request for renegotiation. The Council's current policies towards Earth colonies are no longer acceptable. We're prepared to demonstrate why." As if on cue, one of the Earth ships shifted position. There was no engine flare, no visible means of propulsion. It simply ceased to be in one location and existed in another. "That's impossible," Vexher's science officer whispered. "The energy requirements alone—" "Would you like to see what else is impossible?" Chen asked. "Or would you prefer to connect me with someone who can begin meaningful diplomatic discussions?" Vexher felt the weight of history pressing down on him. His sensor arrays were still struggling to get clear readings on the human ships. Their hulls seemed to exist in a state of quantum uncertainty, simultaneously there and not there. "You understand," he said carefully, "that the Council does not respond well to threats." Chen's smile returned, razor sharp. "This isn't a threat, Commander. This is a correction of a fundamental misunderstanding. You thought Earth went silent because something happened to us." She paused, letting the weight of her next words sink in. "We went silent because we no longer needed you to hear us coming." The quantum distortion readings from the human ships spiked briefly, and Vexher realized with dawning horror that they weren't detecting the ships themselves. They were only seeing the echoes of where the ships had been moments before. "I'll connect you with Council Command," he said quietly. "Wise choice," Chen nodded. "Let's hope they're equally reasonable. Chen out." As her image faded, Vexher looked out at the fleet that had appeared from nowhere, and wondered if this was how every major shift in galactic power began, not with a bang, but with a silence no one had understood until it was too late. 3 years earlier, Project Ghost Site, Titan Base. Sarah Chen watched through the reinforced viewport as another prototype vanished. Unlike previous failures, this one didn't explode, implode, or tear a hole in space-time. It simply ceased to be. "That's the 4th drone this week," she said, turning to the disheveled man hunched over the quantum interface station. "Talk to me, Marcus." Dr. Marcus Rivera didn't look up from his displays, his fingers dancing over the holographic controls. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days, but his voice was steady. It worked perfectly. It disappeared. That was the point. Now he did look up, and despite his exhaustion, his eyes blazed with intensity. It didn't vanish, Sarah. It moved. We just couldn't perceive the transition. He gestured at a cascade of data flowing across his screens. The quantum signature is exactly what we predicted. We're not just bending space, we're stepping outside of conventional reality. Sarah moved closer, studying the readings. Where did it go? Better question. When did it go? Marcus's smile had an edge of mania. The drone existed in a superposition of states. From its perspective, it was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. When it reappeared, he called up another display. Perfect materialization, 2,000 kilometers from launch point, zero energy signature. The Council won't be able to track this. The Council won't even be able to comprehend it. Marcus's smile faded. You know what this means? Sarah did. She remembered the reports from Proxima Colony, the Council's peacekeeping blockade that prevented reinforcements from arriving. The official statement, *regrettable losses due to independent hostile action. 7 weeks, she said quietly. They held out for 7 weeks, waiting for help that never came. The Council knew the swarm was coming. They just wanted to see how we'd handle it. Marcus stood, stretching muscles cramped from hours of work. 3,000 colonists dead, all to satisfy their curiosity about human adaptability. He walked to the viewport, staring out at Titan's hydrocarbon seas. We're nothing but an experiment to them, a primitive species to be studied and contained. Not anymore. Sarah joined him at the window. How long until we can scale this up to capital ships? The math works, the engineering. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. 6 months. Maybe less with the new quantum processors from Europa Station. Sarah noted the tension in his shoulders, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. What aren't you telling me? The ethical implications alone. Marcus turned to face her. We're talking about vessels that can appear anywhere without warning. No defense against them, no way to detect them. The balance of power was never balanced to begin with. Sarah's voice hardened. The Council holds all the cards. They control the trade routes, the technology exchanges, the colonization rights. They watch us struggle and die while taking notes on our survival strategies. And this is better? Becoming the thing they fear? No. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. This is becoming the thing they never saw coming. Every limitation they put on us, every casual cruelty justified by their superiority, it ends now. She gestured at the space where the prototype had vanished. You've given us more than a new drive system, Marcus. You've given us a chance to rewrite the rules. Marcus looked at the data streams, at the proof that human ingenuity had once again turned limitations into advantages. The Council won't know what hit them. That's the point, Sarah said softly. They never do, until it's too late. Through the viewport, Titan's atmosphere cast an otherworldly glow across the research facility, humanity's secret forge, where the chains of Council oversight were finally being broken, one quantum leap at a time. Vale moved through the Council's secure archives like a shadow, her chameleonic skin adapting to match the crystalline walls. As the Council's most effective intelligence operative, she had access to every classified file, every hidden database. But for the first time in her career, she was hunting ghosts. Nothing, she reported, her form rippling back to its natural silver grey as she entered Regent Kixatal's private chamber. Every shipyard we've identified is a decoy. Minimal power signatures, skeleton crews, no actual production capacity. Kixatal's scales shifted through patterns of frustration. They knew we'd be watching. They planned for it. Worse. Vale projected a holographic display from her neural implants. Analysis of material shipments suggests they've been building these false sites for years. Every time we thought we were tracking their military expansion, we were seeing exactly what they wanted us to see. The door chimed, admitting High Monitor Zexley and Ambassador Mral. Vale noted how Mral's crystalline form vibrated with barely contained anger. The humans have denied our request for inspections. Mral announced. Their commander Chen suggests we focus on diplomatic solutions, rather than, as she put it, wasting time looking for things we won't find.
She's toying with us. Zexley's tendrils coiled anxiously. What are our options?
Vale manipulated her holographic display, showing a map of known human space. We've analyzed every quantum fluctuation, every gravitational anomaly, every energy spike in their territory for the past 3 years. But look at this. She highlighted a series of seemingly random patterns. These distortions we detected, they're not evidence of their shipyards. Kixatal moved closer, her scales darkening. Their test flights. The technology was already developed, already deployed. The silence wasn't the beginning, Vale said quietly. It was the end. The culmination of years of preparation. How did we miss this? Mral demanded. Our technology is superior. Our intelligence networks are based on assumptions that no longer apply. Kixatal's voice cut through the chamber. Vale, show them the Proxima analysis. Vale hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough for Kixatal to notice, but not long enough to raise suspicion. She displayed the data from the colony incident. We thought we were conducting an experiment, Kixatal continued, testing human adaptability. But they were watching us watch them, learning how we think, how we react. Her scales flashed warning patterns. Every time we tested them, we revealed ourselves. There's something else. Vale brought up new data streams. The ghost ships we've detected? They're not randomly distributed. They're positioned along very specific coordinates. She overlaid a new pattern on the map, and suddenly the random dots connected into a clear geometric pattern. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. It's a net, Zexley whispered. They've already surrounded every major council world. Not just surrounded, Vale corrected, her silver skin rippling with what might have been admiration. They've boxed us in. Any aggressive action on our part would trigger responses from multiple vectors. We wouldn't see them coming until it was too late. Kixatal studied the pattern for a long moment. They don't want war, she said finally. They want us to understand that everything has changed. She turned to Vale. Find me a way to contact Commander Chen directly. No official channels. Vale nodded, already fading into the background. As she left, she allowed herself a small smile. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Vale materialized in the secure meeting room aboard Sarah Chen's flagship, her chameleonic skin shifting back to silver grey. The quantum displacement always left her slightly dizzy, a side effect of the modified ghost drive technology that Earth had specifically adapted for her biology. The Council took the bait, she reported. They've seen the pattern of our fleet positions. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display where dozens of ghost ships blinked in and out of normal space. Behind her, Marcus worked at a console, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. And their reaction? Exactly as you predicted. They recognize the tactical advantage, but not its true purpose. Vale's skin rippled with something like amusement. They think we're positioning for a potential strike. When in reality, Marcus said without looking up, we're preparing to save their lives. His voice carried a mix of irony and resignation. Assuming they don't force us to prove our capabilities first. Sarah turned to Vale. Kixatal requested direct contact. She'll use the quantum channel within the hour. She believes she's discovered it independently. Vale moved to the tactical display, her form flowing like liquid mercury. The Council still hasn't realized that their entire quantum communications network has been compromised for months. Every secret, every transmission has passed through channels we designed, Sarah finished. The silence wasn't just about hiding our movements. It was about controlling their information flow. She squared her shoulders. Time to implement the final phase. Marcus. He finally looked up from his console, dark eyes troubled. The calculations are complete. When the swarm reaches Council space, they'll have exactly 6 hours to evacuate their core worlds. Without our ghost drive technology, they won't stand a chance, Vale finished. The same scenario as Proxima Colony, but on a massive scale. Her skin darkened with memory. They left us to die there, as an experiment. And now we'll save them, Sarah said quietly, whether they like it or not. A priority alert flashed across the tactical display. Marcus straightened. Quantum transmission incoming, it's Kixatal. Right on schedule. Sarah nodded to Vale. Take your position. Let's show the Council exactly what humanity is capable of. As Vale faded from view, the holographic image of Regent Kixatal materialized. Her scales showed patterns of concern and calculation. Commander Chen, she began, I believe we need to discuss. Multiple alarms blared simultaneously. The tactical display exploded with new data as Marcus's hands flew across his controls. Multiple quantum ruptures detected. His voice was tight. Swarm vessels emerging throughout Council space. Massive numbers. This is a full invasion fleet. Kixatal's image flickered as she received the same information. Impossible. Our early warning systems were designed to detect normal space transitions, Sarah cut in. The swarm has evolved. They've developed their own version of quantum displacement technology. She met Kixatal's gaze. But unlike our ghost drive, theirs is crude, devastating to local spacetime. Each transit creates a cascade failure in normal space. Understanding dawned in Kixatal's expression. You knew? This entire time? We tried to warn you 3 years ago. You chose to turn it into an experiment. Sarah's voice was steel. Now you have a choice. Accept our help, all of it, on our terms, or face the swarm alone. The tactical display showed more ruptures opening, more swarm ships pouring through. And around them, Earth's ghost fleet waited, positioned perfectly to either save or condemn the Council worlds. Time to decide, Regent, Sarah said softly. The game is over. The real war is about to begin. Kixatal watched as her perfectly ordered universe crumbled. On every display in the Council chamber, swarm ships tore reality apart with their crude quantum transitions. Behind them, space-time itself began to deteriorate. And in between those ruptures, Earth's ghost fleet waited with impossible precision. The evacuation will take at least 12 hours, Ambassador Morale protested, his crystalline form fracturing with stress. Even with all available ships. You have 6 hours, Sarah Chen's image stated flatly. That's all the time we can give you before the spatial damage becomes irreversible. Her eyes found Kixatal. Unless you accept our help. Zexley's tendrils thrashed. Help? You orchestrated this entire... We predicted it, Sarah corrected. We prepared for it. We tried to warn you. Her hologram stepped forward, seeming to fill the chamber. Now, watch closely. At some unseen signal, Earth's ghost ships began to move. Not the crude, reality-tearing jumps of the swarm, but smooth transitions that barely rippled space-time. One moment they were scattered across Council space. The next, they formed an intricate, three-dimensional geometric pattern. Marcus, Sarah commanded, initiate quantum containment field. Energy cascaded between the Earth ships, forming a lattice of pure possibility. Where it touched the swarm's ruptures, space-time began to stabilize. Impossible, Morale whispered. That word, Kixatal said quietly, has lost all meaning where humans are concerned. She rose from her throne, scales shifting through complex patterns of decision. What are your terms, Commander? The same ones we tried to present 3 years ago. Sarah's voice carried the weight of vindication. Full recognition of Earth sovereignty, unrestricted colonial rights, and most importantly... She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. A joint defense council, equal representation, equal authority. Vale materialized beside Sarah's hologram, her silver skin gleaming. The swarm is only the first threat. There are others coming, threats that will require all of our combined strength to face. You ask us to surrender our authority, Morale began, but Kixatal cut him off.
No, the Regent said. They ask us to survive, to evolve. She straightened, her scales settling into the formal patterns of official decree. 3 years ago, we thought ourselves wise to study human adaptation. We never considered that we might need to adapt ourselves. Around them, the quantum containment field continued to spread, stabilizing reality itself as Earth's ghost fleet demonstrated mastery over forces the Council had thought impossible to control.
The Council accepts your terms, Kixatal declared, not because we must, but because you've proven yourselves worthy allies, not through force, but through foresight. She met Sarah's gaze. Even now, you could have simply let us fall. Sarah's hologram smiled slightly. That was never an option. Humanity doesn't abandon its own, even those who once abandoned us. As the last of the spatial ruptures sealed and the swarm vessels found themselves trapped in a maze of quantum fields, Kixatal realized that the true victory here wasn't military or technological. It was evolutionary. The Council had finally learned to adapt. And so, she pronounced formally, the silence ends. No, Sarah corrected gently. Now the real conversation begins.